So when it comes to a belief in God, and I may have mentioned this before, I taught philosophy for a little while in a community college. Different experience from when I taught it in a more religious institution. So obviously people are coming from so many different backgrounds, and it wasn't until closer to the end of the semester, that first semester, when people figured out what my background really is, because I didn't want it to get in the way of them being open to with wherever they were on their own journey of understanding. And in the end, they had asked me, "Do you still believe in God?" And I'm like, "Yes." And I'm like, I also think there are very practical reasons why a belief in God is a good thing for people, for anyone, because it is so easy to put yourself as being most important, and you are important, obviously. But as humans, we are way better at making it about ourselves and losing sight of a larger picture, a larger mission as to why you're here, a purpose why you're here. And so for me, there's a great practical sense to that, because it also allows me to be put in check, that I'm not making myself more important than I am. On some levels, even larger, more of the macro scale, I think we find what happens, we see unfolding before our eyes what happens when there isn't this larger, more objective set of values, I guess, in some sense. Um, because we're humans, it's very easy to make gods out of things, because we want to hold on, we want to be a part of, and so we create our gods. We certainly see that in our political system here in the United States, where both sides in many ways become gods in and of themselves. And the one thing we have to be mindful of, and this is where it really begins to come into play, is our ability to demonize the other. That's really where we begin to cross the line. I was having a conversation with a group of men a couple of weeks ago, and I had mentioned, they were talking about how it's very much a battle of good and evil and good and bad. I'm like, hold on, hold on, hold on. It is way too easy to say this is good and this is bad when it comes to these, on this more macro level. That's not true. Matter of fact, that's a very dangerous path to go down anyway, because it often leads to destruction of people that just isn't necessary, because it's not based in fact, it's not based in a deeper truth, that the running of good and evil is running in my life just as much as it is anywhere else. I'm not void of that because I make the choice to do good in the world. Matter of fact, you're probably even more prone to it in that case, because it's so easy to rationalize and justify what you're doing in the name of something bigger than yourself, when in reality it may be bigger than yourself, but it's still not bigger than that. It's bigger in the sense that it's the God that you've created, that we've created, and we've done that politically very much in our world here. Both sides have done that, are doing a tremendous disservice. It also points out, though, how religion is failing people as well, because religion has bought into the same thing and is feeding into these gods in many ways, that is then, when we talk about this distrust in institutions, it, it's because these institutions essentially are in bed with one another at this point. Which leads me to the point of why I believe a resurgence or a belief in God is so necessary. If we continue down the path that we're on, absence of something bigger than ourselves, and bigger than, I mean, all of us, bigger than humanity, we're going to continue down a path where we just, in many ways, eat each other alive. And we already see it. I mean, it's a part of our politics already, where it's about demonizing and condemning the other. It's a dangerous, dangerous path, because essentially what we do in those situations is what I had mentioned about this conversation with a group of men a few weeks ago. Is we then determine what's good, and we determine what's bad, and we determine what's evil. If you are a person of faith, then I suggest you go way back to the beginning, to Adam and Eve, and that mythological story in the Bible. Essentially what they try to do is try to put themselves in the place of, and it's what we're doing. And what happens to them? What happens in that story? So we don't have to look far. We don't have to say this will never happen, because historically, on the mythological level, this continues to happen, and it will happen because we allow it to happen. And so for those who don't want to believe or struggle with a belief, I have said, let's just look at it practically. I can't argue with you whether there is a God or not. I just can't. I'm not trained in that capacity, and I also believe it gets you absolutely nowhere, more often than not. It's great for a philosophy classroom, but in real life, not so much. So can we agree, practically speaking, on a very pragmatic level, that believing in something bigger than ourselves does help keep us in check? That I'm not the center of the world, you're not the center of the world. It's in many ways a built-in check and balance system that's afforded to us, whether you believe it or not. And so on a practical level, and in the space that we find ourselves as a country, as a world, I think we have to really begin to ask ourselves, is there something big? Are we allowing something bigger than ourselves to at least keep us in check our humanity? Otherwise, we're going to continue down this path again that has been spelled out for us historically over time. Look at the great mythologies that we ascribe to, and that has nothing to do with faith background. That has everything to do with the human condition more than anything. This is the path that humans take. This is what happens when humans take that path. What do we need to do to put ourselves back in check? I'm not sure that could even happen, because humans choose then to, in many ways, continue down that path until the lesson is learned. And there will be a lesson. It's probably not going to be the lesson you think it is, because if you're in the camp of deciding good and evil, you're going to have a very hard time saying that this is what's going to happen, because you're immediately going to want to blame someone else for it, when in reality, you're participating in it yourself. So I flip through the old mythologies of God language and see the path we're on, and view it through the lens of that, and tell me why, like, practically speaking, why this is good. It would be hard to come up with an answer. The better thing would be, let's take our chances and recognize that maybe there is something bigger than ourselves. There's always something bigger than you. That there just is. And let's allow that to keep us in check as humans, so that we don't run ourselves off a cliff, but rather recognize our mistake ahead of time, and in many ways bring us back into a healthier space as human beings.